Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I am, as always and ever, Scott Jones.
I am Bill Bohr without any adverbs.
Powerfully, strongly, Bill comes. He very, very cleverly, quirkily, liberally, very liberally he comes. Bill Bohr comes in to Vermont, okay? He probably wants the Ukraine war to go on forever, okay? Probably supports LBGTQIZT mice funding in countries we've never heard of.
Yeah.
Bill, what are you? What are these 300-year-olds that collects Social Security?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm. Yeah. I'm
By the way, that was the best line in the speech when he said, "We've got people like 200 or 300 years older. They're older than the country, collecting Social Security." Bobby turns to Bobby Kennedy. Bobby, I guess the American people are healthier than you thought.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I mean, look. When the joke's hit, the joke's hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The State of the Union is very strong, powerful, and strong.
Yeah. Yeah. We just are hitting on all cylinders right now.
We are. Dude. 40 days. We've done more. We're like the second greatest. First two,
My question. I was afraid to ask who the designated survivor was.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess who is maybe Little Marco, but now Little Marco was there. No, Little Marco. He threw Marco under the bus. He said, "And we're gonna get the Panama Canal back." And where's Marco? And if Marco, we'll know who to blame if it doesn't work out. Game of Thrones.
Right, but like the season that the showrunners quit.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But we're not going to talk about this tonight, please.
No, we can talk about it all night. I could talk about that stuff all night. Trump trolling the Democratic Party, the signs. It's like everybody's
I did like you. It was kind of like the cabinet showed up in one of those clown cars.
Oh God! Just walking in, I died laughing with the cabinet walking in. I thought, I don't know why they're walking in. I just started uncontrollably laughing.
You were just reviewing the resumes in your head.
And the look of them, just this it looks like Idiocracy. It just looks like something. It's like something out of some silly movie.
It's one of those. You know how they have like B celebrity, C celebrity, and then as people start to become celebrities, it's like one of these reality shows, right?
Yeah, exactly. This could be the surreal life or whatever. I expect Flavor Flav to come in. Flavor Flav! you with Brigitte Nielsen, Flavor Flav. Where's Eric Estrada in the cabinet? With Gary Busey.
Yeah. And like each week they reveal which one gets voted off the cabinet. Yeah.
The immunity idol. Remember in Survivor they had the immunity idol and you got to vote people off the island? I remember one time on Survivor, this one woman, they're airing the grievances and the woman says to another woman that, at the end, sometimes they tell you how you feel. The woman says, "You are a snake in the grass. If you crawled 50 miles across the desert dying of thirst, I would not spit in your mouth."
Well, our kids are watching Trader or whatever it is. Like the guy, it's in a Scottish castle, and it's all these people like who've all had plastic surgery, too much Botox. But it's there's like a couple traders who are trying to undermine everyone else. And I can't think of the guy. He does mystery on on BBC. It's on PBS, but he's a Scottish actor. You know, I can't think of his name. I just kind of walk in and out watching it, but it's like that would be about the caliber of what the show would be. Yeah. And that show actually is entertaining somewhat. I find myself not wanting to watch it, but as I'm walking through the room, I end up staying like 15 minutes watching the goofiness. So this is a reality show that once was the greatest republic in the world. So there we are.
I was never an Apprentice guy, but I
No.
mean, I want to go back and watch it.
Oh,
Although that movie, The Apprentice, looks great.
yeah.
I haven't watched it, but
I haven't watched
it. But it actually looks. The clips I've seen of it look really good.
Well, they got some Academy Awards. They got a few nominations. Yeah. All right. You sent me bunches of stuff today. I actually looked. I read them.
Inundated you.
I read everything you sent me today. I had a busy day too, so feel that you feel honored that you made the cut.
Don't worry, I don't.
That you didn't make the cut, or you don't
no,
feel
honored. I don't feel honored. I don't feel honored in the least. So, Bill, I have a list of places I'm never moving to. It just grew by one locale. And that locale is Carmel, Indiana. Carmel, Indiana. I, of course, am moving to Gary, Indiana.
I don't know. Do we have it? I don't know. Do we have any
listeners?
Listeners from Carmel?
We might. It's possible. And we have listeners all over the place. So
Where's John? What part of Indiana does John Mellencamp live in? I'm pretty sure he does not live in Carmel.
Not in Carmel. Does not sound like Mellencamp.
So why are you putting Carmel on the map here today?
Lovely as it sounds, there are no traffic lights, all roundabouts.
Right.
So that's interesting all in itself. I mean, that to me is a case. That was the strongest factor in it not being on the list. Was that they've done away with traffic lights and it's all roundabouts.
Yeah, no, it's funny. You can tell when people from Connecticut, we have roundabouts up here. For whatever reason, it seems like the people from Connecticut just can't quite grasp them. I don't know why Connecticut people. They have them in Massachusetts. They probably have them in Connecticut, but anytime you're in front of you have a Connecticut drivers in front of you, it's going to be an adventure as they go into our roundabouts up here. Yeah.
Bill, Carmel, according to a guy named Aaron Renn, who was the chief subject of a recent New York Times piece. This is today, March 6th. Carmel, according to Mr. Aaron Renn, is proof that we can have an America where things still work. So if you were disheartened by the State of the Union, if you were saddened by the 300-year-olds collecting Social Security, by the transgendered mice, by the countries in Africa that no one's heard of, if all of this rhetoric and all of the problems in the country are plaguing you, you're just driven with anxiety and dread, know that there is a place called Carmel, Indiana, where things work.
Or if you're not able to get your passport,
go right to Indiana.
You're not able to get your passport issued because no one works there anymore.
No. Bill, they don't know, Bill. It's because no one wants to leave.
No one wants to leave.
Bill, it's been run by Republicans for decades.
Right.
With the same mayor from 1996 to 2024.
That's always a good idea.
The city is built. This is the New York Times language. I didn't write this. The city is built big and beautifully.
I don't know if reading the New York Times in that voice works. Yeah,
but that's what they said.
I know. I read
big and beautifully, often in traditionalist architectural styles. The streets, bikeable and walkable, are almost eerily free of trash. At what point does a clean street become eerie? That's what I want to know. This is police officers enforce traffic laws strictly, and drivers behave with a noticeable lack of aggression. It's Mayberry or Bedford Falls. No, wait, where's Mr. Potter?
Mr. Potter is
He just gave the State of the Union.
He works. Yeah, he works. But yeah, is Ed Harris actually running this from behind a
right, exactly. There's
like
so much about this that creeps me out, except for I like that there's no traffic lights. Like, we're kind of into
that. I like the roundabout too.
I guarantee you the parking tickets here are expensive though.
Yeah. Well, so, but as wonderful as all that sounds, Scott, that's not why he merits our attention tonight. By the way, your good friend Rusty Reno likes him.
I love Rusty Reno. I'm a huge Rusty Reno fan.
Did you say present? Did you say that in present tense or past tense?
Oh wait, there we go. I stopped for a second there, Mike.
I know, I saw that. That's because you said you love Rusty Reno.
You stopped for me.
And the satellite interrupted just because of that.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
There
we go. We paused for a second.
Yeah.
That's all right. And you know what? We're not going to edit that out because. But are you going
to edit out the "I love Rusty Reno" part?
No, I love Rusty. I would say that. I would say that. Rusty's a great guy. He's great to hang out with. I don't agree with all of his opinions.
What about his thinking?
I mean, look, Rusty's.
Well, he's really led that First Things magazine, right where it should be right now.
It's I affectionately call it Four Things. But hey, I'll bet you there's no shortage of subscribers to that fine publication in Carmel, Indiana. How many Jews do you think there are in Carmel?
How many Jews? We're not talking Mount Carmel.
No.
Although that's mostly the Druze who live there anyway. So anyway,
so Aaron Renn is a guy that the author Ruth Graham, not to be confused, I think, with Ruth Lotz Graham, which is the daughter of Billy Graham, but he is a guy that is famous for an essay called, I think the essay is called "Life in the Negative World,"
right?
And that is an essay that first appeared in First Things. And what's interesting is that Rusty Reno notes that it's big when people cite it without attribution. So
we always call that plagiarism, but
right, exactly. It used to be called plagiarism. Back in the day, it was called.
Back in the day,
it was called plagiarism, but no, it's not called that anymore. And it was basically a piece that Mr. Renn wrote where he was breaking historical epochs down into three distinctive eras, right?
And he's not a historian, correct?
No, he's works in business or something.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, anyway, I'm just.
By the way, the article itself has its own Wikipedia page. By the way, the actual title of the article is called "The Three Worlds of Evangelicalism,"
right?
And so the positive world. So there's these three worlds. The positive world can be dated prior to 1994, and that is when basically it was a good thing to be a Christian in his mind. Pre-1994,
right,
in the United States, it was
culturally
a positive thing. It generally helped your social standing.
Lots of people have talked about this. Yes,
right. This is not.
By the way, can I just say that I am a little suspect of any scheme of history that has all three epics within my lifetime.
Well, you've lived through them, Bill. You should like this.
It feels like, all right. Anyway, it's not quite Yakima Fiore, but go ahead. Yeah.
So from 1994 to 2014, he thinks this is interesting. This is when Newt Gingrich came to power, right?
Right. There we go.
That was the Republican Revolution. That's when our friend Joe Scarborough also
he
came into the House of Representatives.
Another great American. Yeah.
Little Joey down in Mar-a-Lago.
Kissing the ring.
Kissing the ring.
At least the ring.
You know Joey.
He likes those kissing those things.
He likes those shrimp down in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
The chocolate cake. So from 1994 to 2014, the broader society, Renn thinks, was more neutral to Christianity. So when Christianity was neither privileged, Renn thought, nor disfavored. And in this audience, in this context, he thought that churches like Tim Keller's Redeemer and Hillsong did pretty well. These are churches that were in urban environments that were engaged in the culture, that thought that you had a fair shake in the culture if you made good arguments and you were culturally relevant, not so much seeker sensitive. Keller certainly wasn't. Hillsong, they have very good music.
The seeker sensitive stuff is earlier. That's
that's more like that's like the 80s. But
Yeah.
so I mean, Keller wouldn't have been seeker sensitive, but he would have. And Keller, when he wrote about preaching, he would say that he's not trying to be seeker sensitive, but he's trying to be contextually relevant. He wants
Is this the first half of 1914 or the second half of 1914? So he's not. Is he a sociologist, Scott?
I think he was in finance. But look, don't be a snob.
I'm just.
Don't be a snob, Bill. Don't be.
I'm just you,
Bill. Look, Bill. Let me ask you some questions, okay? Does Robert Kennedy Jr. have any scientific or health expertise?
Absolutely not.
Has Linda McMahon ever done doctoral work in education? Has Kristi Noem ever been in law enforcement, Bill?
I feel like you're asking me trap questions. The answer would be no to all of those.
I don't know what the point was to all this.
Just one other way I'm out of touch.
Okay.
You told me I was out of touch.
Yeah, I told you that the other day. I said we are out of touch. I didn't say you. I said we were out of touch.
You know what? I didn't care about the you part of we. It was me that I was thinking of.
I implicated myself. So, but what's interesting that Renn writes in this first piece that the so-called neutral world engagement was predominantly practiced by college-educated evangelicals. And to quote him, he says, these evangelicals tended to downplay flashpoint social issues such as abortion or homosexuality. Instead, they emphasized the gospel often in a therapeutic register and priorities like helping the poor and select forms of social activism. They were also much less political than the positive world's Christians, though this distinction broke down in 2016 when many in the group vociferously opposed Donald Trump. So these people that were these evangelicals, this is true about Keller, who I know a lot about. I mean, Keller never preached on sexuality, never preached on abortion. You could go to that.
I wouldn't call him I mean, I wouldn't call him.
No, he wasn't therapeutic. That's probably a. Yeah, I mean, although, that it's a more complex discussion.
Yeah, I think it's he
was rigorously biblical, but
he was very biblically centered.
But I know that you could, for instance, Keller's church didn't ordain women. There were no women in leadership on the board or anything like that. They didn't talk about that, right? That was sort of in the back room. That was saved for the meeting where they were selling timeshares. I mean, that was not. So then this is interesting, Bill. And then comes 2014. Boom.
When was it? What week? Did it say which week or just generally the year? Okay.
Second half of 2014, the Visigoths come over the wall. This is shortly before the 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges decision that legalize same-sex marriage throughout the United States. Renn argues that being known as a Christian had become a social and professional negative in elite circles.
So that's just about the time you and I started
Podcast.
What epic are we at? We're in the
This podcast would have been so much bigger if we just started it in like 2011.
oh my goodness. Yeah. We just missed it.
So it's interesting that in this negative world, he argued in this piece that cultural engagers, many of whom live in secular urban environments or work with and interact with a lot of non-Christians, have the most to lose from the negative world. So the people that are interested in Christian mission in the evangelical world have pursued, he thinks, one of two directions: either accommodation with their interlocutors, so getting into sort of talking about race in terms that the left would generally talk about it, maybe moving to full inclusion of LGBT persons. He calls this the path of ex-evangelicalism and deconstruction. Meanwhile, the more socially and economically downscale culture warriors, the people in, I guess that would be Indiana, they moved into support for Trumpism. And that's where we're at today, where we have this sort of I guess we're in the negative space. But this is interesting because we're in the negative space, but Trump is president. So I guess the theory, I don't know, Bill. Is the theory?
Well,
is the theory?
I think, I keep going back to that Ezra Klein. One of the things we're trying to do is find ways to understand different things that are happening, right? Yeah, because we want to make sure that, there's a lot that we don't understand. We even admit that we don't fully, we don't have the same mindset as certain people. So how do we begin to understand what's going on as a way of trying to be constructive and responding, and also trying to understand what seems to be some really interesting divergences among, he strongly, he was very influenced by the whole, whatever, what do you want to call the man thing?
The manosphere. The manosphere. Yeah, he went through a divorce, which he doesn't talk about, which I don't blame him. Who wants to talk about that stuff?
No, but I mean,
he was apparently, struggling emotionally, personally, and he relays in this New York Times article that he really didn't find much comfort or much relevant pastoral ministry or help to get through that stuff. And the manosphere stuff helped him, right? That I guess podcasters.
I guess what's one way of, if you feel emasculated, one way is to, and I again, I'm not judging or anything. I mean, there's a lot of, it's interesting. My younger two boys went to all boys school, all prep school. They got recruited to play sports. And, I always said if my parents would have tried to done that to me, I'd have run off to Canada, which might have been a good idea anyway. But
that would have been prescient.
That would have been a good idea. But I do think there's something about, one of the things that was really good about this place was they understood different ways, the different emotional makeup and learning ways that males or boys work. And I do think, I think there's been this hyper masculinity we talked about before, which the absurdity of what goes on with Trump and those rallies and things. Yet what is it speaking to that there's a lack and need? And this guy kind of articulated that, and so unfortunately he found, and some of that stuff is kind of almost neo-pagan, go out in the woods and beat a drum. And a lot of it's been Christianized, like the traveling Christian bodybuilders. I mean, the first time I saw it, I actually thought it was a joke. I thought it was some sort of skit, but it wasn't. And so there's a sense where there's something that they didn't have, not got in their own cultural upbringing or their own churches, and that somehow has helped them find themselves. I'm not sure the self that they found is always, who might have say what's the best self for them, but it does strike me that what is it that the Joe Rogans of the world offer people? What is it that Peterson has offered these people and that listen to them? And I actually had a member of my church listen to the podcast that he refers to, or that they refer to in that article. And so, so now we even got kind of a new version of, Josh McDowell 2.0 or whatever this guy is. But it's just an interesting space that at some levels, it feels like they've won the day, but the idea that they're still thinking of this as a negative space, I find that interesting. Although he does mention that they may have to rethink what's going on here a little bit.
Yeah, and Keller, when this article came out, said, I don't know what he's talking about. Manhattan in 1989, when he started Redeemer, wasn't neutral. He thought it was negative. Right? He experienced a lot of cultural hostility, and David French said the same thing, that in the so-called neutral era, when he was at Harvard, he was told he should die for his pro-life views, like go kill yourself, not like so. I mean, he didn't find it in neutral. So I mean, you could. So I when I look at this, I think of this great Lindbeck quote, which I think we mentioned before, where Lindbeck said around 1980 or something. He said the church in North America is no longer established, yet is not yet disestablished. And I think that's right. I mean, even though we technically haven't had an established church in the United States, but I get what he means. He means that it's no longer in the position of cultural enfranchisement, but not yet disenfranchised, right? And so it exists in this weird liminal space in America where there are moments of cultural resurgence. I just read a piece today, I forget where I was looking at this, but that was saying that maybe it was in this New York Times piece, I don't know, somewhere, that the decline in church growth or church attendance has leveled off. That no longer is church.
Yeah, that was the latest Pew that came out earlier this week.
And they're saying that some of this is they're attributing it to young men returning, and this is part of what happens, right? If you become on the cultural right, you go back to church, even if you're an atheist. You're sort of, because you can't sort of. I mean, I think it's difficult in today's cultural conservatism to be an atheist, just like it's sometimes hard to be a person of faith in progressive circles. I mean, it's just because you have a secular team and a non-secular team.
I will say that this election is bumping church attendance up here, at least in my community.
Hey, whatever it takes.
I had probably half my average attendance of Sunday morning in Ash Wednesday service in Low Church UCC, and my Episcopal colleague said he had the most people he'd ever had in Ash Wednesday across town. So, and I'm speaking at a youth ministry conference, and I'm giving a talk at a UCC Vermont Youth Conference. So, I thought maybe 6 people would show up. There are 90 some people signed up for this. I didn't think there was that many people in our whole conference, but there's no, I don't know. This is all anecdotal, but I do think that, I do think some of the ways there are people now disillusioned with what America's become. Okay.
Not in Carmel, Indiana. They're not.
No, but what I'm saying, there's different people.
Whose decorative cake shop has received attention from Oprah Winfrey and Disney.
I've read that.
Yay!
Wow.
And Renn was very important. It was made it a point to take the report like, hey, look at our cake shop. Bet you
There.
there's. Bet you
How
there's.
did what finally caused Bill to die on the podcast? It was the cake shop
Is
in
the cake
Carmel.
shop
He couldn't.
comment?
That was the bridge too far. No, I think there are people. There are. I think there's recovery in certain Catholic parishes. My third son goes to a Catholic church. He says it's packed. It's not. It's in a pretty a comfortably middle class, upper middle class community. So, and that mass is packed. Uh, so, um, so I think I mean, it makes sense to me that certain things run out, right? I think, I just think, I read your article and remind me about what late capitalism just wears you out. In some levels, the materialism just wears you out. And I think sometimes that causes people to turn to the living God, right? So there's all kinds of. I always think God wants everyone in His kingdom, and it's amazing what He uses.
You know what you could
With his,
say? You know what you could say to people who are not engaged spiritually? You could quote Donald Trump to the African Americans in 2016, to the African American community. What the hell you have to lose?
well, that's one way to go. That's a very interesting variation on Pascal's wager right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of
Uh,
negative. Yeah, that's a pretty whacked version of Pascal. I mean, look, he likes to make bets. I like to make bets. I mean, I gambled at Atlantic City. I lost, but yet I won.
well, one of the things that's interesting. I had a very moving conversation today with a person whose husband, and this was they met freshman year at a something. She was at Smith, he was at Dartmouth, and um, one of the guys they had moved before I got here, but they had this like one of these great love stories. Matter of fact, one of the people at church said they had a picture of themselves as college students, and it looked like James Dean with the prettiest model that he could find in that this was this couple, and they had this wonderful long love story, and he passed away, and the great privilege of this work is that here I had this most amazing conversation with someone I just met today, and one of the things she said that she found some comfort, and I'll get the quote wrong, but she brought up Pope Francis said something about that the gift of aging and all the things that come with it is in the fragile nature of our existence. We have an opportunity to see a greater dimension of our need and the grace of God. And I'm not at all hopeful or optimistic about our country. But
That's because you don't live in Carmel, Indiana.
I don't live in Carmel, Indiana. I live somewhere. I would take my town over Carmel. I live in a great place. I live in a
How many traffic lights do you have, and what's your cake shop like?
We have two lovely cake shops.
Has Oprah ever talked about them?
I don't know. I don't really. I have. All right. True confession. I have never watched an episode of Oprah, so I don't.
Not even the one where Tom Cruise jumped up and down on the couch.
Was that Oprah?
Yeah, that was
I don't
Oprah.
know. Okay, no, obviously I did not, because I don't even know what show that was.
I think that was Oprah. I think.
What
That
I'm
was
saying is, we all hit points in our lives, whether it's your personal life, your financial life. This guy had to come up with a different kind of framework for his Christian life because the life he started with didn't end up working out. People who are very discouraged about the current political situation, but just life, right? Aging, um, watching people you love struggle financially, mentally, losing a neighbor, losing a friend. All these things give us an opportunity to be open to the living God, and certainly that's what this season is about, right? creating some space for us to encounter that God.
Yeah, and I mean, behold, I make all things new, right? I mean, I often think it's interesting.
Yeah,
Whatever context we're in, it's there's some newness to it, right? Again,
of course, that is after everything gets destroyed in Revelation. He says that. But,
well,
well,
you know, can't make an omelet.
But anyway,
you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, Bill.
I mean, the 2/3 of the earth that gets destroyed, that needed to be taken over. Anyway.
It's pruning, Bill. You ever plant a garden?
I by the way, but I almost always quote that some point during any memorial service I do. So I hold to that hope as well.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I don't know if we're in the negative space or not, but you know, whatever space we're in, right? We have, as you said, the opportunity to meet God, to meet one another, to be creative, to bear witness, to live, our lives. So
and as always, I enjoy sharing this space with you, my friends.
Amen to that.
Okay, peace, everyone.